goes. That's the rule. 12 minutes past 9 on 720 ABC Radio Perth and WA. Next, you are going to hear more about, well, this is a curious story. Police have been accused of some very serious failings after finding drugs in a car near the WA border. I'll tell you more about this in a sec.
Don't forget, it's our live broadcast from the Friends of Kings Park plant sale. It's on this Saturday and you'll discover rare plants and get some expert tips from Josh Byrne, 6 till 10 a.m. on 720 ABC Radio Perth and WA.
The easygoing lifestyle, the sense of freedom, where I grew up.
Connect with Perth and WA.
This is Mornings
with Nadia Mitsopoulos.
ABC Radio Perth, WA and the ABC Listen app.
And now, interesting article in The Australian that caught our eye. It's about a judge in the district court who's blasted WA police over the way they handled a vehicle search near Eucla, accusing them of serious and fundamental breaches of process. Now, the car had more than $4 million worth of meth and cocaine in it, but those mistakes by police enabled the accused man to walk free after all of the charges were dropped. And what's more, his defence lawyer thinks that more legal challenges could now follow, based on what police admitted during this case. Now, the lawyer's name is Nick Scerri, and he explained what happened to his client back in July 2023.
Yes, he was driving from the East Coast and approached the town of Eucla, I suppose, in order to enter the state of Western Australia. His vehicle was stopped by police. He was spoken to. They searched his vehicle. They located some drugs in that vehicle, and then he was arrested and ultimately taken to the local police station, where he remained for quite some time after that.
The judge was quite scathing about the way police conducted themselves. Can you take us through what police did that was so problematic?
Yeah, look, there was a number of things, and ultimately the court found that the combination of all those factors was just so serious that it was not something the court could be seen to be giving their approval to, which is why ultimately that evidence was found to be inadmissible. But effectively what they did was the stopping of the vehicle was found to be unlawful, so they're not able to just stop a vehicle for no purpose. The subsequent search of the vehicle was not done in accordance with the law either. And then when he was in custody, they're only entitled to hold you for 6 hours if they haven't charged you yet. One of the officers signed the extension form where they can hold you for another 6 hours. He signed that himself when that's supposed to be done by an independent officer. They also withheld the right for him to speak to a lawyer. He asked 3 times in 13 hours if he could speak to a lawyer. That was withheld until the 13th hour. And at that stage, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. So his chances of speaking to a lawyer were pretty slim. And they failed to give him the rights that you're supposed to be read by the police once you have been arrested, which include that you can speak to a lawyer and speak to your family and things of that nature. And then in between that, there were all sorts of other things that I wasn't particularly happy about.
Okay, and I thought Eucla was one of those new stop and search zones where police do not have to have a reason to search a car. Was that not the case at the time of this incident?
No, so that power, which is in the Misuse of Drugs Act, that's a power that can be, for lack of a better word, activated. I think it's activated by a senior officer, but it's only enforced for a limited period of time. I think it's about a month. And then after that, it ceases to be enforced and then someone has to apply to activate it again. It's not a continuing power, if that makes sense.
So it wasn't in force when this happened?
No, that's correct.
This goes beyond your client, though, doesn't it? What does it tell us about the way WA Police are conducting vehicle searches at that border and the issue of quotas?
Well, my understanding, what became apparent from the hearing subsequent to cross-examination of a number of officers, is that there was a target for that location, a specific target of about 5,500 cars. Police were advised by their supervisors that they had to stop. And the difficulty of that, of course, is by giving a quota or a target that effectively, I suppose, puts the police on the ground in the position where to reach that target. they've been stopping cars willy-nilly, so to speak. But as I say, there has to be a proper basis to pull someone over. You can't just stop a vehicle just to have a chat, if that makes sense.
My guest this morning is defence lawyer Nick Scerri, talking about how WA police, who were trying to stop the flow of illicit drugs into WA, have been found to have acted unlawfully. Was the issue of quotas, and when that was raised and revealed, did that surprise you?
It did, and what became apparent as well during cross-examination was that I'm told every district has KPI sort of target indicators in relation to traffic. So I assume that includes that every district has to stop a minimum amount of cars. And that, in its sense, almost encourages police to perhaps be a little bit relaxed, if I can put it that way, in terms of the law, just to meet that quota. I'm not of the view that it's a positive thing.
Could there be other people now who may challenge their convictions based on this case?
Well, I think it's a strong possibility, given the location and it being the entry to the state, and given what we now know about the manner in which police were conducting themselves. I think it's almost a certainty that there will be people in custody at the moment serving, a term of imprisonment for, could be a number of things, but things that stem from the search of the vehicle. And it might be the case that the legality of the search had been missed when the matter had gone to court. So you could expect that if you were sitting in prison at the moment, you'd heard about this and it rang a bell in terms of how you came to find yourself in prison, you'd probably be on the phone to your lawyer very quickly saying, can you check whether they searched my car in a lawful way?
And it's interesting because there will be people listening that will struggle to understand how your client could walk free when millions of dollars of drugs were found in his car. There was a taped confession. How is it that the whole case had to be thrown out because of those police failings when your client had drugs on him?
Well, let me say this. The community is right to be concerned about drugs and the dissemination of drugs into the community, but they shouldn't be distracted by that so much, because remember, the judge in this case used the word corruption. She found there to be noble cause corruption, which is, of course, when the police are bending or breaking the rules in order to achieve what they perceive to be a just outcome. But that, in my view, should be a greater concern, because the way noble cause corruption works is what begins as a twig later becomes a tree if it's not kept in check, if that makes sense. So this is perhaps the thin edge of the wedge. And if it hadn't been put under the spotlight now, it affects everyone, because the bigger picture is that your liberty to move about in the community as a member of the community is being interfered with. Whether they find drugs or something else is really just a matter of a collateral issue, if that makes sense.
Well, Nick, you'll recall that police over here were caught out using data from G2G passes during COVID to try and assist in their criminal investigations when it wasn't allowed.
Yes, I do recall that, and I suppose it could be said that that's indicative of a similar attitude, that whatever it takes to get our man, that's what we're going to do. But of course, you recall, I think the Premier at the time ensured us that information wouldn't be used for those sorts of purposes, and then it was. And then I think the Parliament was required to quickly rush something through to prevent the police from doing it again. So it is concerning.
This is Mornings with Nadia Mitsopoulos on ABC Radio Perth, WA and the ABC Listen app.
Now we're talking.
That is interesting, isn't it? Nick Scerri there, he is the defence lawyer. I should say too, there was actually a suppression order on identifying the accused man or the passenger, so we couldn't tell you who that was, but all charges dropped. A harsh lesson, I think, there for police. This is interesting. As I said, we saw it in The Australian today. You can read more about it there. But that is certainly a very, very interesting case. I'll tell you what else is interesting. We'll get to this next. Give me a call.